It began on a quiet, silent night inside the Celesta Council chamber, a place where the brightest minds of the galaxy gathered to argue, to boast, and to pretend they understood the universe. The chamber was massive, stretching in a circle with tall crystal windows that looked out into deep space, where stars shimmered like tiny lanterns in a dark sea. Hundreds of alien leaders sat in curved rows, their voices low, discussing old myths and forgotten stories. A glowing hologram floated in the center of the room, an ancient star map that traced the rise and fall of civilizations. Near the edge of the map, glowing faintly, was a small blue planet named Earth. Most of the aliens barely even looked at it. They saw it as a symbol of old stories told long ago, not something real. They joked about humans, calling them bedtime monsters from ancient tales. Some laughed, saying humans were only myths used to scare children. Others claimed humans were wiped out thousands of years ago during the Great Stellar Purge, a war so old that no one alive remembered the truth. The council chamber felt relaxed, peaceful, almost too comfortable. No one imagined anything unusual could happen on this calm night. But that peace broke in one single, silent moment. A warning symbol flashed across the floating screens around the hall. It made no sound, yet it stole the attention of every leader in the room within seconds. Bright red symbols blinked again and again, each pulse faster than the last. The chamber grew quiet as all eyes turned to the main screen. An unknown fleet was entering the outer rim. At first, the alien leaders believed it was a glitch, maybe a sensor malfunction. But the alarm continued flashing, growing brighter with every passing second. Council members leaned forward, their faces darkening with confusion. The readings made no sense. The symbols on the screen matched nothing in their database. No empire. No known species. No merchant group. No pirate clan. Nothing. It was a ghost fleet, something that had no name, no history, no origin. The ships moved with perfect precision, weaving through empty space like silent shadows. They created no engine signature, leaving no heat, no fuel trail, no trace of technology. They moved like something alive. The chamber filled with whispers. The councillors grew nervous, trading frightened looks, their voices trembling as they asked each other the same questions. Is this real? How can a fleet appear without warning? Who are they? The alien generals at the front table stared in silence at the approaching formation. They had seen many war fleets before, massive destroyers, glowing dreadnoughts, ships that could cut moons in half, but this fleet felt different. It carried a strange, cold presence. A presence that felt ancient, dangerous, forgotten. The council tried to zoom in on the ships, but the scanners failed again and again. Every image came back blurred, as if the fleet was wrapped in some kind of invisible fog. The more they tried to focus, the more the screens distorted. A chilling tension spread slowly across the chamber. An older admiral, a thin and tired-looking alien with silver markings on his forehead, stood up with shaky legs. His voice was soft, but the entire room turned quiet to listen. This matches the old legends. The leaders frowned at him. Some rolled their eyes. Others sighed loudly, annoyed. But the admiral continued speaking, fear trembling in his every word. The humans. The Terran fleet. The room exploded with laughter. Some councillors even clapped mockingly. They thought he was losing his mind. One leader shouted from the back, "Humans are dead. They died long before our ancestors were born." Another added, "There is no Terran fleet. Only stories and lies from the Dark Ages." But the old admiral shook his head slowly. "Not lies," he whispered. "Warnings." The laughter died a little as they noticed his eyes, filled with something they didn't expect. Real fear. He took a breath and tried again. In the archives, in the oldest records, it is written that if humans ever returned, they would not send diplomats. They would not send traders. They would send their fleet first. The room turned uneasy. A few leaders exchanged silent, worried looks. The admiral's voice dropped even lower. "And if these ships are human, then we are already too late." A silence heavier than gravity settled over the chamber. No one laughed anymore. No one spoke. No one moved. The alarm lights kept flashing red around them, bathing their faces in a ghostly glow. Then the screen flickered again, and the fleet grew closer. Slow, steady, unstoppable. The shapes were still unclear, but bigger now. Dozens of towering silhouettes glided through the rim, each one larger than any known cruiser in the galaxy. They did not drift like regular ships. They moved with purpose, as if following a silent command. Every movement was perfect, synchronized, almost like watching a single creature with many limbs. Far beyond the borders of the Council's reach, deep in the cold darkness of space, the unknown warships pushed forward. Their hulls shimmered faintly with old metal patterns, runes carved long before any current empire was born. These markings glowed like distant fireflies, lighting up the emptiness around them. Some of the symbols looked cracked and worn, as if the ships had fought countless battles. Other symbols looked untouched, preserved like sacred words. None of the aliens recognized them, but the Admiral did. That was what made him afraid. Terran markings. Old Terran script. Words spoken by a species no one had seen in thousands of years, yet everyone feared. The Council attempted one last scan. This time the image sharpened for a second. 1 second was all they needed. A giant warship filled the screen. Its design was sharp, angular, powerful, nothing like modern alien ships. It looked older, stronger, more solid. A cold blue emblem sat on the center of its hull, a symbol shaped like a human hand holding a burning star. The emblem pulsed once. Then the screen went black. Every leader in the chamber jumped back, their hearts pounding in fear. They could no longer deny what they had seen. The ancient symbol was real. The ship was real. The legend was real. Across the galaxy, news spread fast. Civilizations whispered in terror. Worlds shut their borders. Some empires moved their fleets closer to their capitals. Others prepared for total war. But everyone asked the same question. Are humans truly back? No one had an answer. Yet the fleet kept coming. Quiet. Silent. Growing. Alien leaders across the galaxy tried to calm their people, but fear had already taken root. Some planets believed it was the return of a forgotten empire. Others believed it was a ghost army. And a few believed it was the beginning of the end. Back in the Celesta chamber, the Admiral closed his eyes as the fleet entered sensor range. He knew the stories better than anyone. Stories older than every empire. Stories whispered by old soldiers who remembered a time when humans walked the stars. They said humans were not conquerors. They were survivors. They were builders. But when threatened, they were unstoppable. Humans fought until the last breath, the last ship, the last heartbeat. The Admiral opened his eyes again. His voice shook as he spoke the final words of the legend. When the humans return, he whispered, they return with the void behind them. And tonight, the void was moving. The alien leaders watched in complete silence as the Terran fleet, massive, ancient, mysterious, drifted closer. No lights, no sounds, no message, no name. Only the cold truth that the galaxies had ignored for thousands of years. The legends were awake. The humans were back, and the galaxy was not ready. Fear moved across the galaxy like a quiet storm, slow at first, then faster with every passing hour, touching world after world until even the strongest empires felt a cold weight settle on their hearts. On the outer rim, where lonely planets floated in silence, people looked up at the sky and saw the same thing. Massive warships drifting past their moons with no sound, no signal, no explanation. Children stayed awake at night whispering about the shadows in space, and parents locked their doors even though they knew doors could not protect them from something like this. Every station reported the same strange detail. Any ship that tried to approach the unknown fleet had their systems shut down instantly, as if someone pressed an invisible switch. The patrol ships floated helplessly in space until the Terran vessels moved away again, releasing them like useless toys. There was no attack, no destruction, no violence. But that was what made it worse. The silence felt heavier than war. It felt like judgment. In the Celesta capital, the Council tried to calm the panic growing across every communication channel. They sent messages claiming everything was under control, telling people the fleet might be a natural phenomenon or a rogue AI. But the citizens were not fools. They had seen the sheer size of the warships, the strange markings glowing faintly like old memories, the cold formation that never broke shape. People everywhere whispered the same two words, the words no one living had ever expected to speak, the humans. The legends they once mocked were now the only explanation that made sense. The council had spent hundreds of years erasing human history, calling them myths, calling their old stories exaggerations, calling their technology impossible. But the more they denied, the stronger the fear became. Empires that never agreed on anything now shared one feeling: dread. The old admiral, the only one who believed the truth from the beginning, stood alone in a dim hallway outside the chamber. His hands shook as he stared at the floor, remembering what he had seen in forbidden archives, the old images of cities burning, of humans fighting impossible odds with stubborn, unbreakable hearts. He remembered the stories of how humans built their fleets not to conquer but to survive, how they never surrendered, how they never forgot those who hurt them. The admiral's chest tightened with emotion he couldn't hide. It wasn't hatred. It was regret. Regret for the galaxy's arrogance. Regret for laughing at warnings. Regret for thinking legends could not walk again. He whispered to himself, "We should have listened. We should have kept the peace." But his voice broke, because he knew the truth. The humans had not returned for peace. Across the rim, a small mining colony went dark when a shadow passed over its sky. A young alien worker named Kalen stood outside his home, staring up as a massive Terran ship moved overhead like a silent mountain in the sky. He felt something strange, a heavy pressure in his chest that made him step back without knowing why. The ship didn't attack. It didn't scan them. It didn't even look at them. It simply drifted by, quiet and cold. But Kalen's young son held his father's hand tightly and asked, "Father, are those the humans?" Kalen froze. He didn't want to answer. He had no answer. He only held his son tighter as the ship disappeared beyond the horizon, leaving behind a silence that felt like a warning. More fleets appeared through wormholes the galaxy had abandoned long ago. They moved with the same pattern, silent, coordinated, unstoppable. No empire dared fire on them. The Terran fleet ignored every attempt at communication. Every message the council sent came back unanswered, the static line feeling like a closed door. Alien races gathered in their homes, listening to the news with trembling voices. Some prayed. Some packed their belongings. Some simply sat in silence, understanding that history was happening again, something their ancestors had feared but never spoken loudly. The old legendary threat had returned, not with weapons firing, but with a silence so deep it made even the bravest soldiers feel small. Back in the council chamber, the leaders argued loudly, voices shaking with anger and fear. Some demanded that they prepare for war. Others begged to attempt peace. But one truth hung in the room like a dark cloud. No one knew what humans wanted. And not knowing was worse than any threat. The admiral stepped inside again, his voice tired as he said, "They haven't attacked us. They haven't spoken. They haven't taken anything. They just watch. They judge. And I fear they are remembering." His words chilled the room. For once, no one laughed. No one mocked him. His fear had become their fear. They all understood that something long buried was rising from the darkness. The fleet continued to spread across star systems, moving like a wave of shadows. Their formation filled the sky above Nebra Drift, a place once known for peaceful travelers. A young alien girl sat by the edge of a cliff, watching as dozens of Terran ships passed silently overhead. She had heard stories from her grandmother, stories of humans who were brave and kind, but who were treated unfairly by the council long ago. She whispered a quiet question to the sky, her eyes filled with innocent sadness. "Are you angry at us?" The ships did not answer. They simply moved like ghosts across the stars. Slowly, the galaxy realized something terrifying. Humans had not returned as conquerors. They had returned as watchers, observers, judges. The fear spreading across civilizations was not fear of death. It was fear of being remembered. Fear of old sins finally coming back to the surface. Every empire had a story about how they had treated humans during the purge. Some helped destroy them. Some stayed silent. Some looked away. And now silence was no longer an escape. Yet in all the fear, something else grew: emotion. The older generation felt guilt. The younger generation felt curiosity. Those who remembered the old stories felt sorrow. The galaxy was not just afraid of humans. They were afraid of themselves, of who they had been, of what they had done. And still, the Terran fleet said nothing. It waited, watching, deciding. By the end of the day, across thousands of worlds, one truth had spread like wildfire. If the humans remembered the past, then the galaxy was in trouble. And still the fleet grew, expanding slowly but steadily, surrounding the galactic center like a tightening ring. People looked at the sky and whispered in shaking voices, "What do they want?" But no one had an answer. Only the silent ships drifting closer, cold and calm, like giants returning home after a very long sleep. The Terran fleet finally stopped near the abandoned Nebra Gate, an ancient wormhole ring floating dead in space, cold and cracked from centuries of silence. The entire galaxy waited, holding its breath as thousands of alien sensors watched the motionless formation of those silent giants. Every leader, every soldier, every family member across the stars stared at their screens, waiting for something to happen. And then, without warning, without light, without sound, a single transmission slipped through the void. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was only one line: "We remember." Those two words shattered the galaxy. The message echoed across thousands of worlds within seconds, repeated again and again by every communication relay. People froze in their homes. Ships paused in mid-flight. Entire colonies went silent as if their hearts had stopped. No voice identified itself. No ship claimed the message. But everyone knew. Everyone felt the weight of it. The voice sounded human. Not angry. Not loud. But carrying a deep sadness and a quiet strength that made every listener tremble. It was the voice of someone who had survived something terrible and had never forgotten it. It was a voice that felt older than any empire now standing. The council chamber erupted in panic. Leaders shouted over one another, demanding answers, demanding explanations, demanding someone, anyone, to tell them this was a mistake. But the old admiral felt his throat tighten as he whispered, "They remember." And those words carried more weight than any fleet. The galaxy began sending desperate communications to the Terran fleet, begging for more information. Some pleaded for peace. Some apologized for crimes committed millennia ago. Some demanded that the humans reveal themselves. But nothing came back. Only those two haunting words repeated once every hour like a cold heartbeat. "We remember." And with every repetition, the galaxy panicked more. On a distant moon named Rethora 9, a young alien engineer named Liara stood alone on a landing platform, staring at the sky as the message echoed through the loudspeakers. She had grown up reading stories about humans, stories that painted them as fearless explorers, pioneers of the stars who built beautiful cities and powerful ships. Her grandmother used to tell her, if humans ever return, it will be because the galaxy hurt them. Liara never believed those stories. Now, tears slid down her cheeks as she whispered into the wind, "I hope we did not fail them too badly." The moon's surface trembled lightly from the passing shadow of a Terran ship drifting overhead. It didn't attack. It didn't scan. It simply passed by like a silent reminder that the past was not gone. Meanwhile, entire archives across the galaxy were opened in panic. Historians dug through old files, trying to understand what humans meant by "we remember." They uncovered old photos, blurry images of human cities burning, children hiding in shelters, soldiers fighting hopeless battles during the Great Stellar Purge. For the first time in thousands of years, younger generations saw what their ancestors had done, and shame spread through their hearts like a slow poison. It wasn't just fear of the humans returning. It was fear of the truth. Fear of history waking up again. The council held emergency meetings, their voices trembling as they read the old reports. Many turned pale when they saw the records of betrayal, how the old empires had tricked the humans, how they had joined forces to wipe them out, how they had erased their existence from the star maps, pretending humans never lived at all. The more they read, the heavier the guilt became. One counselor, a proud and powerful leader, broke down in tears as she whispered, "We lied about everything. We said humans were monsters, but it was us." Her voice cracked as she looked at the message glowing on the screen. "We remember." It felt like a quiet accusation. Across the galaxy, children asked their parents what the message meant. Parents didn't know how to answer. How could they explain that an entire species had been hunted? How could they explain that the legends were not legends but victims forgotten on purpose? Fear spread, but it wasn't the usual fear of war or destruction. It was the fear of facing the truth. The fear of realizing the past was returning with eyes wide open. At Nebra, the Terran fleet stayed still, their enormous hulls reflecting the faint light of distant stars. They did not move. They did not attack. They simply watched. The silence became suffocating. Every military fleet positioned around the gate felt powerless. Their strongest weapons looked useless compared to the size and calm confidence of the Terran armada. Even the bravest alien admirals felt a trembling in their hands when they looked at the radar. There was something deeply unsettling about a fleet this strong choosing not to speak. It felt like being judged quietly by someone who already knew every sin committed. Then one Terran ship powered a faint blue glow. It was not a weapon. It was not a threat. It was something else. The glow illuminated strange ancient runes carved along the ship's sides, runes that told stories through symbols. Aliens zoomed their cameras and felt their chest tighten. The runes depicted humans standing among stars, smiling, exploring, holding hands with alien species long extinct. The next line of runes showed fire, destruction, betrayal. The final line showed humans building something deep underground, hidden from the galaxy. The message was clear. Humans were telling the galaxy their story without speaking a single word. Back on the capital world, a young alien student named Theron sat in a crowded learning hall as the news played on massive screens. His eyes filled with emotion as he saw images of the ancient purge. "Why didn't they teach us this?" he whispered to his teacher. She did not answer. She couldn't. She had no words to explain the hidden truth. She gently placed a hand on his shoulder as if to comfort him, but her own hand trembled. "We were told to forget," she finally said, voice soft and broken. "We were told humans were dangerous. We were told lies." Theron stared at the glowing message again. "We remember." For the first time in his life, he understood what guilt felt like. The emotional weight crushed the galaxy like a slow-falling stone. Empires apologized publicly. Leaders begged for mercy. Citizens lit candles in their homes, hoping the humans could somehow feel their regret through the void. But the Terran fleet gave no answer. Only the same message repeated, soft as a whisper, sharp as truth. "We remember." And with every repetition, the galaxy realized something terrifying. Humans didn't return for revenge. They didn't return for war. They returned because the past demanded it. They returned because truth could not stay buried forever. They returned because someone, somewhere, decided the galaxy was finally old enough to face what it had tried to forget. But what humans wanted, no one knew. And that uncertainty broke the galaxy more than any weapon ever could. Panic spread through the great empires like a wildfire no one could stop, burning through every palace, every war room, every city square, until entire civilizations felt the same cold truth sinking into their bones. The Terran fleet was not passing by, not exploring, not drifting without direction. They were positioning themselves. Quietly, calmly, like a hunter choosing the perfect angle before striking. And the galaxy knew it. Every leader, every soldier, every citizen felt a silent pressure growing inside their chest, the kind that made it hard to breathe. The council tried to act strong, but even their voices trembled as they ordered their fleets to assemble. Across the stars, massive alien battleships lifted into the sky, engines roaring as they formed protective rings around their capitals. Stations lit their shields to maximum brightness, glowing like frightened lanterns in the night. Troops rushed into bases. Generals barked commands. But deep inside, every soldier knew the truth. They were not preparing to win. They were preparing to survive. In the command tower of the Celesta Defense Fleet, Admiral Seren stood stiffly in front of a giant holoscreen showing the Terran formation at Nebra Gate. His body looked strong, but his eyes were tired and full of fear. He had fought many wars, survived many battles, but he had never felt this kind of pressure. The Terran ships were too still, too calm, too confident. Every alien fleet was loud and messy, engines humming, shields flickering, communication signals buzzing non-stop. But the Terran fleet was silent. Perfect. Controlled. They moved like a single mind. Seren knew what that meant. They are not preparing for us, he whispered to himself. They are waiting for us to make the first mistake. That thought carved a deep ache into his heart. Across the galaxy, in the Larion Empire, soldiers ran drills with shaking hands, dropping weapons, rushing to pick them up again. Their commander tried to calm them, telling them not to be afraid, telling them humans were probably peaceful. But no one believed him. They had all seen the message, we remember. They had all seen the Terran warships drifting like ancient mountains across space. A young soldier named Avon tried to steady his breathing as he looked up at his squad mates. Do you think, if we stay quiet, they won't hurt us? He asked softly. No one answered. One soldier looked down. Another wiped tears from her eyes. It wasn't because they expected death. It was because they expected judgment. Meanwhile, at the border of the Vantari Star Kingdom, an entire planet watched the skies. Every telescope pointed up. Every communication tower listened for signals. Hundreds of citizens gathered on rooftops as a Terran cruiser passed above them, blocking starlight with its massive shadow. A Vantari mother held her young daughter close as the girl whispered, "Are they going to destroy us?" The mother swallowed, her throat tight. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "But they remember what we did. And they are not here to forget." Tears rolled down the daughter's cheeks as she asked, "Why didn't anyone help them back then?" The mother had no answer. She only hugged her child as the huge ship glided by, silent, heavy, frightening. Back inside the Celesta Council chamber, chaos ruled. Leaders shouted over each other, voices shaking with fear and pride. Some wanted to surrender immediately. Others wanted to fight. A few insisted it was all a misunderstanding. But the room fell into a suffocating silence when a small screen displayed old classified footage, the last known human colony burning under the attack of the Great Stellar Purge. The cries, the fire, the destruction, the betrayal. No one could look away. A counselor covered her mouth with her hands and sobbed quietly. Another leader lowered his head in shame, unable to face the images of his ancestors destroying an entire species. "This is why they remember," he whispered, voice filled with guilt and pain. "This is why they came back." The old admiral stood again, his voice cracking with emotion. "Listen to me," he said. "Humans are not attacking us. If they wanted us dead, they would have fired already. They are waiting, watching. They want to see if we choose fear or honesty." The room listened, but the panic did not fade. They knew he was right. And yet the fear of being judged, truly judged, was worse than the fear of death. At the edge of the galaxy, a small group of alien monks climbed a mountain to pray under the night sky. They had long believed the humans were not monsters but guardians who once kept balance in the galaxy. As the Terran ships appeared faintly in the distance like glowing scars in space, their leader whispered a prayer, his voice trembling with emotion. "May the humans show mercy. May the galaxy learn from its sins. May this night not be the last." His words drifted away with the cold wind, reaching no one, yet heavy with meaning. The Terran fleet made a small movement, just a slight shift, a fraction of a degree. But it was enough to send waves of panic across 1,000 worlds. Fleets scrambled to adjust their positions. Stations activated emergency protocols. Civilians hid in shelters. The fear was not because the Terran ships moved. It was because they moved so gently, so smoothly, like they had done it 1,000,000 times. A movement that graceful could only come from a fleet that knew no equal. A quiet question spread across every corner of the galaxy, whispered by soldiers, citizens, children, scientists, leaders, every voice trembling the same way. Why are the humans back? No one had the answer. But deep down, every soul in the galaxy felt the same terrifying truth rising like a slow wave. Humans had returned not for war, but for justice. And the galaxy was not sure if it deserved mercy. For 3 long days, the Terran fleet remained frozen in the dark, silent like a sleeping storm that refused to reveal its purpose, and the galaxy lived in that silence like prisoners waiting for a verdict they feared they deserved. Every world hid behind their shields, every warship hovered in formation, every citizen stared at the sky with trembling hearts. Then, on the 4th day, something changed. A single Terran ship broke formation, a dark titan sliding forward with slow, controlled motion, as if the void itself moved aside to make room. The massive vessel drifted toward an alien space station orbiting the trade moon of Selvaran, a place known for peace, laughter, and families. But on this day, the station was silent. Everyone inside stood frozen at their windows, staring at the approaching shape that blocked the light of 3 suns. Some cried quietly. Some prayed. Some simply held loved ones close, knowing history was unfolding whether they were ready or not. The ship came close enough that the station's metal frame shook from its gravitational pull. The alien commander of the station, a gentle-hearted officer named Ralvek, felt cold sweat run down his spine as he stared at the ship's hull, seeing ancient Terran markings glowing faintly like memories rising from a grave. He whispered to himself, "What do they want? What do they want from us?" His voice broke because he feared the answer. Then it happened. A small channel opened, just a soft click on the station's communication screen. No alarm. No threat. Just a simple open line, waiting. Ralvek's hands trembled as he reached forward, pressing the accept key with a fear he couldn't hide. The screen turned black, and for a moment no sound came. The entire station held its breath. Every world listening held its breath. And then a voice spoke. A human voice. Calm, cold, deep, but not angry, not shouting. It carried a weight so heavy that it wrapped itself around every listener like a chain of memories. The voice said only one sentence: "You erased us." A gasp echoed across the galaxy. Millions of aliens felt their hearts stop for a moment. The voice sounded so real, so alive, so full of quiet pain that even the bravest soldiers felt tears form in their eyes. The voice continued, smooth but sharp like steel wrapped in sorrow. "You hunted us. You betrayed us. You called us legends because it was easier than admitting what you did." Ralvek felt the air leave his lungs. He wanted to speak, to apologize, to explain that he hadn't been alive during the purge, that he wasn't part of the cruelty of old empires. But his throat closed, and nothing came out. The human voice did not stop. "You told your children we never existed. You erased our homes from your maps. You buried the truth because you were afraid of what we would become if we survived." The words struck like gentle blows, not violent but deep, cutting through the soul more than any weapon ever could. Across the galaxy, families sat together, listening in silence as the truth flowed into their homes. Some cried. Some looked away in shame. Some clutched their children tightly, wishing they could take back the past. In the Celesta Council, leaders sat frozen, unable to form a single sentence as they listened to the quiet human voice that carried the truth of a 1,000-year wound. The old admiral closed his eyes, tears slipping down his face. "I knew," he whispered. "I knew they would not forget." On the station, Ralvek finally gathered enough strength to speak. His voice trembled like a child's. "Please, please, what do you want from us?" For a long, terrifying moment, there was silence. Then the human voice answered, softer than before, almost gentle. "We want the galaxy to face itself." Ralvek's hands shook harder. He whispered, "Face what?" And the human voice replied, "Face what you did to us. Face the truth you buried. Face the ghosts you made." The station fell into a heavy silence. No one moved. No one breathed. The human voice then added something that made the entire galaxy shiver. "We did not come to destroy you. We came so you cannot hide anymore." Those words carried more power than any weapon. They felt like forgiveness wrapped in warning, like a light shining into a long-hidden darkness. Slowly, the Terran ship pulled away from the station, drifting back into formation like a shadow returning to its nest. It did not attack. It did not threaten. It simply left them with the truth and the weight of their own guilt. Citizens across thousands of worlds fell to their knees, overwhelmed by emotion, shame, fear, sorrow, hope. Some whispered apologies to the sky. Others begged silently for mercy. And some simply wept, realizing that the greatest judgment was not coming from human weapons, but from human memory. As the Terran fleet reformed, the message spread across every corner of the galaxy. Humans spoke. Humans were alive. Humans remembered everything. And in that moment, the galaxy understood something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. The humans did not return as conquerors, they returned as witnesses. Witnesses of a past the galaxy tried to bury. Witnesses of a truth that could no longer stay silent. And the galaxy, trembling with emotion, realized that the first contact after 1,000 years was not the beginning of war, it was the beginning of truth. The galaxy waited in shaking silence after the first human contact, every world frozen between fear and hope, between guilt and desperation, and every eye focused on the Terran fleet hovering like a silent storm at the edge of Nebra Gate. For a full day, nothing happened. Not a single ship moved. Not a single message came. That stillness felt heavier than war. It wrapped around every planet like a cold fog, filling people with a fear that grew with every ticking second. Then the largest Terran warship shifted slightly, its hull glowing with a faint, slow pulse, like a sleeping giant opening one eye. The pulse spread across the fleet, lighting each vessel in a soft blue shimmer. Cameras zoomed in, catching the faint reflections dancing across ancient metal, revealing scars carved deep into the hulls. Scars from battles long forgotten, wounds from a war no living alien had ever witnessed. The galaxy stared in horror and awe. These ships had been forged in fire, carved by time, shaped by suffering. They were not new. They were survivors. Then, slowly, a new transmission reached the Council, not through normal channels but through an old communication frequency, one last used during the time of the humans. The Council chamber turned silent as the message opened. This time, the voice was not one human. It was many. Male, female, young, old. A chorus of memories. 1,000 voices speaking at once, calm but filled with something deeper than anger, history. You want to know who we are, the voices said together, their tones smooth and haunting. So listen. The room dimmed as a hologram flickered to life. Every world watching received the same image. The hologram showed ancient Earth during the days before the purge. Cities glowing with life, children laughing, humans exploring distant planets with joy. Then the image shifted. Explosions. Alien fleets swarming. Burning skies. The great stellar purge. Screams. Families running. Human soldiers fighting until they could no longer stand. Ships breaking apart in the void. It wasn't loud. It wasn't exaggerated. It was quiet, real, heartbreaking. The room filled with silent tears. Even the strongest alien leaders felt their throats tighten. The voices continued, soft and steady. We did not die. We hid. The hologram shifted again, showing underground caverns on Mars, Titan, Europa, massive underground vaults filled with humans working tirelessly, building new ships in secret, creating engines that bent light, weaving armor that absorbed stars. They were not hiding in fear. They were rebuilding with determination. Determination forged from pain. We retreated, the voices said. Not to surrender, but to survive. The scene expanded, revealing enormous shipyards hidden deep within asteroid belts, powered by silent reactors and protected by cloaking fields so advanced they could not be detected by any alien empire. Thousands of human engineers shaped the Terran fleet from scraps and ancient technology, each ship a symbol of hope and revenge woven into one. The galaxy watched in frozen disbelief. Humans did not vanish. Humans prepared. And they prepared with everything they had. The voices grew softer, carrying a weight that felt like grief wrapped in steel. We lost everything. Our people. Our cities. Our future. But we did not lose our will. The hologram shifted again, revealing the first Terran warship completed in secret. Shaped like a silent mountain, armed with weapons no one had ever seen, its hull etched with the names of lost human colonies. It floated slowly out of the hidden dock like a ghost pulled from the past. Thousands of humans stood watching it, some crying, some saluting, some placing their hands over their hearts. It was not born from victory. It was born from sorrow. Back in the council chamber, a young alien diplomat covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. She whispered, "We never knew. We never knew they suffered like this." Beside her, another leader trembled, feeling guilt tightening around his soul like a chain. "We didn't want to know," he said softly. "We allowed our ancestors to hide the truth because it made us feel strong." Shame filled the room like a heavy fog. The voices spoke again, calm and unbroken. "For 1,000 years, we stayed silent. We watched your empires rise, your fleets grow, your children learn the same lies your ancestors created. We saw how you shaped the galaxy after erasing us." The hologram showed scenes of alien worlds celebrating victory, children reading history books that called humans monsters, governments teaching lies to cover their guilt. Then the scene shifted once more, showing the Terran fleet awakening after centuries of silence. Hulls pulsing with power, engines igniting with blue light, ships rising from underground hangars like titans climbing out of the underworld. It was beautiful and terrifying. "We waited," the voices said. "We learned. We grew stronger. Not to rule. Not to conquer. But to return when the galaxy was old enough to face the truth it buried." And then the last images appeared, thousands of humans standing together, looking toward the stars not with hatred, but with a tired sadness. As if returning was not their desire, but their duty. The hologram faded. The message ended. The council chamber stayed silent for a long time, as if no one dared breathe. Each leader felt a deep ache inside, realizing that the Terran fleet was not a weapon. It was a memory made of metal. A promise shaped into warships. A reminder that a species once destroyed had risen again, stronger than any empire, and not because they wanted revenge, but because they had never been given justice. Finally, the human voices returned one last time, soft and haunting. "Now you know who we are. Now you know why we returned. We survived what you thought would end us." And the message ended with one final line that shook every soul across the galaxy. "The age of hiding is over." The galaxy could not sleep after hearing the truth of the Terran fleet. Whole world stayed awake, staring at the sky with fear heavy in their hearts, waiting for the next move from the humans who had risen from extinction like ghosts carved from steel. And when the next moment came, it did not come with noise or fire or sudden attack. It came quietly, with slow, deliberate movements that made every empire understand just how powerless they were. The Terran fleet began to split. One by one, the enormous human warships drifted apart into 5 massive armadas, each one turning toward a different empire that had taken part in the Great Stellar Purge. There were no threats, no warnings, no ultimatums, only motion. Silent, calm, terrifying motion. Every alien empire panicked instantly. Fleets scrambled, ships launched, soldiers rushed into formation like frightened animals trying to stand tall. But deep inside, they all knew the truth. Nothing they did could stop what was coming. In the Zenthari Dominion, the Emperor watched from his palace balcony as hundreds of his warships took to the skies, their engines burning bright. But even those powerful engines felt weak compared to the steady, perfect glide of the Terran Armada approaching from the outer stars. The Emperor clenched his fists, feeling fear he had never known before. He had spent his life believing humans were myths, shadows, stories made to scare his ancestors. But now the myths were real, and they were coming for him. He whispered to himself, "We cannot win, but we must try." His voice trembled because he knew trying was meaningless, yet doing nothing was worse. Far away, in the Rhinorian Star Empire, citizens gathered in the streets as the sky darkened under the approach of human ships. Some fell to their knees and begged for mercy. Some held signs reading, "We are sorry." Some simply hugged their families, their shoulders shaking with silent fear. A young girl named Lyra clung to her older brother, tears rolling down her cheeks as she whispered, "Why didn't they leave the humans alone? Why did our ancestors do this?" Her brother could not answer. He only held her closer as the shadows of Terran cruisers passed overhead like giant, cold mountains blocking the sun. At the same time, on the Varnock front line, thousands of alien soldiers stood shaking in their armor as the Terran fleet appeared on their radar. Their commander shouted orders, his voice full of forced courage, but his eyes betrayed his fear. He knew the stories, the old stories speaking of human determination, of their will to fight until the universe ran out of breath. And when the Terran ships finally came into view, even he lowered his weapon slightly, overwhelmed by the sight of something so large and ancient, yet so perfect and silent. "Why aren't they firing?" a soldier whispered. The commander swallowed hard. "Because they don't need to." And then the impossible happened. The alien fleets opened fire. Thousands of missiles shot across the stars, beams of energy lit the sky, plasma storms erupted like fireworks of fear. The galaxy unleashed everything it had, every weapon, every defense, every shred of pride it carried. But the Terran fleet didn't even dodge. They didn't activate countermeasures. Their shields absorbed everything without flinching, without shaking, without reacting. It was like throwing stones at a mountain, like screaming at the ocean, like trying to wound a ghost. Slowly, calmly, the Terran armadas responded. Not with destruction, not with death, but with precision. Their weapons fired soft pulses of blue light. No explosions, no flames, just quiet beams that disabled engines and shut down alien ships instantly. Warships went dark. Battleships drifted helplessly. Entire fleets lost power as if their hearts had stopped beating. The humans did not fire to kill. They fired to silence. Across the galaxy, people watched in awe and horror as their mighty fleets fell without a single life lost. It was not war. It was demonstration. It was a reminder. It was a judgment. And that judgment was clear: we control the sky now. In the Celesta Council chamber, leaders watched the live feeds with trembling hands. The old admiral, tears shining in his tired eyes, whispered what everyone already knew: they are not showing strength. They are showing mercy. The room stayed silent, filled with fear and gratitude at the same time. Gratitude that the Terran fleet had chosen disablement instead of annihilation. Fear that this mercy was a warning, not forgiveness. On a distant moon, a lone alien monk sat in meditation as the Terran fleet passed overhead. He felt the ground tremble as the human ships moved across the sky like silent guardians. He bowed his head and whispered, "May they find peace, even if we do not deserve it." His voice cracked, heavy with sorrow. By the end of the day, 5 great empires had fallen to their knees, not from destruction, but from silence. The Terran fleet had disabled 2,000 ships without taking a single life. It was the kind of power that made every soul in the galaxy understand one thing: humans were beyond war, beyond fear, beyond defeat. They had become something else entirely, the quiet judges of a galaxy that once tried to erase them. The silent judgment had begun, and the galaxy could do nothing but wait for what came next. The galaxy was on its knees. Not from broken planets or burning cities, not from lost lives or destroyed fleets, but from something far heavier, a silence so powerful it crushed pride, fear, and arrogance all at once. The Terran fleet hovered in the void like a ring of giants surrounding a frightened world, each ship glowing softly with ancient blue light, each vessel steady and unmoved, as if carved from the night itself. After disabling thousands of enemy ships without taking a single life, the humans had shown the galaxy a kind of strength no empire had ever understood. Strength mixed with control, with patience, with purpose. And that terrified everyone more than destruction ever could. Every world waited, breath held tight, children clinging to their parents, leaders unable to speak, soldiers trembling in silence. What came next would shape the future of the stars. Then, suddenly, the largest Terran warship at the heart of the formation powered its core. The blue glow expanded outward, spreading across its hull like a rising dawn. Every sensor in the galaxy locked onto it. Every screen focused. Every soul froze. A final message was coming. The ship's front panels opened slowly, revealing a deep inner chamber glowing with soft white light. For the first time in 1,000 years, a human stepped forward. He appeared as a hologram across every world, tall, calm, wearing dark armor marked with the Terran emblem. His eyes were steady but sad, carrying the weight of a species that had survived extinction. His face held no hatred, only tired strength, only truth. When he spoke, his voice echoed across every corner of the galaxy, soft yet powerful enough to touch millions of hearts at once. We did not come to rule you. The words hit the galaxy like a quiet storm. Leaders leaned forward. Children stopped crying. Soldiers lowered their weapons in disbelief. The human's voice continued, gentle but unbreakable. We did not come to destroy you. Many listening felt their eyes burn with tears. Whole empires trembled. The human paused for a moment, letting the silence settle like snow. Then he spoke again. We came to remind you. The hologram shifted, showing the galaxies that once existed when humans lived openly among the stars. Alliances, friendships, shared worlds. Then it showed the purge. Then the loneliness of rebuilding. Then the rising of the fleets. The images were not meant to accuse. They were meant to show truth. The human commander looked at the galaxy with eyes full of ancient sorrow. You erased us from your history, but you did not erase us from ours. Those words carried both pain and wisdom, and across the stars, people bowed their heads, understanding the meaning. Humans had not come for revenge. They had come so the galaxy could face the truth it had buried. The hologram faded, and the human's real voice filled the void, soft as a whisper carried through starlight. We will not decide your future. You will. Many leaders gasped, surprised by the unexpected mercy. The human continued, we only ask that the galaxy never forget again. Never repeat again. Never hide again. Slowly, the Terran fleet began to move, not toward the capital planets, not toward the empires, but away from them. Ship after ship turned, engines glowing like blue stars waking from sleep. The galaxy stared in disbelief. Were they leaving? After all this time? After all this fear? The largest Terran ship broadcast one final message, gentle but echoing across the void like the last line of a forgotten story. Humanity returns, not as legends, but as guardians of balance. Gasps spread across worlds. Entire civilizations fell silent. Children looked up at the sky with or instead of fear. And in the council chamber, the old admiral collapsed into his chair, covering his trembling face with his hands as tears streamed down. They didn't want war, he whispered. They wanted truth. The Terran fleet rose together, forming a spiral shape that glowed like a new constellation. Slowly, gracefully, the massive armada drifted toward the uncharted depths of the galaxy. Territory no empire dared enter, territory no map had ever named. The humans were returning to the shadows, to the silence, to wherever they had rebuilt themselves for 1,000 years. And as they faded into the void, stars reflected across their hulls like soft tears on ancient metal. Across the galaxy, people stepped outside their homes, staring up at the sky with mixed hearts, fear, regret, hope. Some cried because they had expected destruction. Instead, they received mercy. Some cried because they understood that forgiveness was not promised, only the chance to change. And some simply watched in silence, realizing they had witnessed something their descendants would talk about for thousands of years. As the last Terran ship disappeared beyond the dark horizon of space, a single truth settled into the hearts of billions. The humans were not gone. They were watching, waiting, protecting. Legends no more. Monsters no more. Victims no more. Guardians. The galaxy would never forget them again. And somewhere in the endless silence of the void, the Terran fleet drifted onward, not as shadows of the past, but as the unseen shield of the future.